My name is Amanda, and this is the story of my near-death experience, a journey that shook my understanding of reality, reshaped my faith, and revealed secrets I never thought I'd hear. It all started on a cold December evening. The snow fell like a shimmering veil over my small town, and everything was blanketed in quiet. I was driving home from a Christmas party with friends. The road was slippery, and I remember thinking how beautiful the world looked, draped in white under the glow of streetlights. I had just rounded a bend when my car skidded on a patch of black ice. The last thing I remember was the sound of shattering glass and the crushing impact as my car collided with a tree. When I opened my eyes, I wasn't in the car anymore, at least not in the way you'd expect. I could see my body still slumped over the steering wheel, motionless as smoke began to rise from the hood. But I wasn't in pain. In fact, I wasn't even in my body. Instead, I felt light, weightless, like I was made of air. I was floating just above the wreckage, and there was an overwhelming sense of calm. It was as though the fear and panic I should have felt couldn't touch me in this state. Then I noticed something unusual. A light, no, a presence, was drawing me upward. It wasn't a blinding light, but it was warm and inviting. I felt an inexplicable pull, as though every fiber of my being wanted to go toward it. Without hesitation, I followed. As I ascended, the world around me faded, replaced by a vast expanse of golden light. I found myself standing, not floating anymore, on what felt like solid ground, though there was nothing visible beneath my feet. In front of me stood a figure of radiant brilliance. The light emanating from him wasn't harsh or overwhelming. It was soothing, like the glow of a hearth on a cold night. "Jesus?" I asked, though I wasn't sure where the words came from. I wasn't using my mouth to speak. It was more like the thoughts were forming and being understood instantly. The figure smiled, and the warmth of his presence intensified. "Yes, Amanda," he said. "I've been waiting for you." His voice wasn't like anything I'd ever heard. It was deep but gentle, and it resonated within me, as though it was speaking directly to my soul. I felt a wave of emotions, peace, awe, and a strange kind of familiarity, like I had always known him but had somehow forgotten. "Why am I here?" I asked. "There are things you need to understand," he replied. "Things that will help you see the world and your purpose within it more clearly." His words filled me with a mixture of anticipation and curiosity. "Can I ask you something?" I ventured. "Of course," he said, his tone inviting. My mind raced with questions, but one rose to the surface, an odd question, considering the gravity of where I was and who I was speaking to. "What about Santa Claus?" I blurted out. "Is he real? And what does Christmas really mean?" For a moment, there was silence. Jesus regarded me with a look that seemed both tender and serious. "You've touched on something important," he said. "But to answer your question, we must go deeper." The light around us shifted, and suddenly I was no longer in the golden expanse. Instead, we were standing in what looked like a snowy forest. The air was crisp, and the ground was covered in a thick layer of snow. In the distance, I could hear the faint sound of bells jingling. "This," Jesus said, gesturing to the scene around us, "is what the world imagines when they think of Santa Claus and Christmas, a picture painted with joy, warmth, and generosity. But there is more to the story." I felt a chill, not from the cold, but from the tone of his words. "What do you mean?" I asked. "Santa Claus, as you know him, is a symbol of giving, of kindness and celebration. But the origins of this figure and the traditions surrounding him are not as pure as they seem." His voice grew somber. "To understand, we must go back to the beginning." As he spoke, the forest around us dissolved, replaced by images, scenes from centuries past. I saw a man in a red cloak surrounded by children handing out small gifts. "This is St. Nicholas," Jesus said, "a man of faith and compassion who sought to help the poor and uplift those in need. He was a reflection of divine love, a light in a dark time." The image shifted. St. Nicholas faded, replaced by something darker. The man in red was no longer gentle and kind. His face was obscured, and his laughter, once joyful, took on a sinister edge. Around him, people danced, but their movements were frantic, almost desperate. But over time, Jesus continued, the image of St. Nicholas was twisted. The spirit of giving became entangled with greed, and the joy of celebration turned into excess. I felt a knot form in my stomach. Are you saying Santa Claus is evil? I asked, horrified. Not evil, Jesus replied, but misused. What was once a reflection of divine love has been corrupted by the world's desires. The true meaning of Christmas, celebrating the gift of life, the miracle of my birth, has been overshadowed by materialism and distractions. The weight of his words pressed down on me. I had always loved Christmas, the lights, the presents, the magic of it all. But now, I saw it in a different light. What can we do? I whispered. Jesus smiled, and the warmth of his presence soothed my unease. The first step is understanding, he said, and that is why you are here. As Jesus spoke, the scenes around us continued to shift and change, each revealing layers of history that I had never known. We were no longer in the snowy forest. Instead, we stood in a dimly lit hall where shadows danced along the walls, cast by the flickering lights of torches. It was eerie and oppressive, a stark contrast to the warmth I had felt moments before. This, Jesus said, gesturing to the space around us, is where the truth begins to fracture. I watched as figures moved through the hall, their faces hidden by masks. They gathered around a towering figure clad in red, whose laughter echoed ominously. The air felt thick with something I couldn't quite place, something darker than the festive joy I associated with Christmas. Santa Claus, Jesus explained, has roots in traditions far older than St. Nicholas. Long before he became the symbol of Christmas, there were other figures, beings celebrated and feared during the winter solstice. This figure, he pointed to the red-cloaked man, is one of them. The image shifted again. Now I saw a horned figure with piercing eyes, surrounded by frightened villagers. It was a stark contrast to the jolly Santa Claus I had grown up with. Krampus, Jesus said. In many cultures, he was seen as the counterbalance to St. Nicholas, a reminder that good and evil often walk hand in hand. He was used to instill fear, to coerce obedience. I shuddered, feeling a chill run through me. But what does this have to do with Santa Claus? I asked. Over time, Jesus replied, these figures blended. The stories of St. Nicholas and the darker spirits of winter merged, creating the image of Santa Claus as both a bringer of gifts and a watcher of deeds. He sees you when you're sleeping. He knows when you're awake. Does that sound familiar? I nodded, the familiar lyrics of a Christmas song taking on a new, unsettling meaning. You're saying Santa's story is rooted in control? Jesus looked at me with a deep, compassionate gaze. Not entirely, but it's true that the narratives have been shaped to influence behavior. What was once a symbol of generosity and divine love has been entangled with fear and materialism. The scene changed again. We were now standing in a bustling city street, brightly lit with Christmas decorations. Shoppers hurried past us, their arms laden with bags. Children tugged on their parents' coats, pointing to storefront displays filled with toys. The air was filled with the sound of carols and the jingle of bells, but there was an undercurrent of something frantic and hollow. This is what Christmas has become for many, Jesus said, his voice tinged with sadness. A celebration of consumption, a race to acquire more. The focus has shifted from the miracle of my birth to the accumulation of wealth and possessions. I felt a pang of guilt as I thought about all the times I had obsessed over buying the perfect gifts, worrying more about impressing others than the true meaning of the holiday. I never thought of it that way, I admitted, but what about the joy it brings? Isn't it good that people come together to celebrate? Jesus smiled gently. The joy of togetherness, of love and giving, is a reflection of what Christmas was meant to be. But the essence, the heart of the celebration, has been lost for many. The focus is no longer on the gift of life, the miracle of hope, but on fleeting pleasures and distractions. I looked around at the bustling street, the decorations and the harried expressions of the shoppers. It all felt so hollow now, so far removed from the warmth and peace I had felt in Jesus' presence. How did it get this way? I asked. The world is easily swayed by what it can see and touch, Jesus said. Over centuries, the celebration of my birth was layered with traditions and symbols that obscured its true meaning. Some of these symbols were innocent, reflections of cultural joy, but others were rooted in darkness, in control and greed, and as the world changed, so too did the meaning of Christmas. We walked through the scene, the crowds moving around us as if we weren't there. I noticed a little girl staring at a toy in a store window, her eyes wide with longing. Her mother sighed, shaking her head, and the girl's face fell. It broke my heart. That longing, Jesus said, is a reminder. People long for something deeper than they often realize. The glitter and gifts, the songs and lights, they are not enough to fill the emptiness inside. The world has forgotten the true gift of Christmas: love, hope, and the promise of redemption. Tears welled in my eyes as I listened. How do we fix it? I asked. How do we bring back the true meaning? Jesus placed a hand on my shoulder, and I felt a warmth unlike anything I had ever known. It starts with you, Amanda, and with every soul willing to look beyond the surface. Share the love you've felt here. Remind the world of the true miracle of Christmas. It is not found in gifts or decorations, but in the act of giving yourself, your love, your kindness, your hope to others. His words resonated deep within me. I thought of all the Christmases I had spent focused on the wrong things, and I felt a determination rise within me to change. But there was something else I needed to know. You said earlier there were secrets about Santa Claus and Christmas, I said. Is there more I need to understand? Jesus' expression grew serious again. Yes, he said, there is one more truth you must see. The scene around us began to dissolve, and I braced myself for whatever revelation was coming next. As the bustling city faded away, I found myself standing in an expanse of darkness, the only light emanating from Jesus beside me. The warmth of his presence reassured me, but there was an undeniable weight in the air, a sense that what I was about to learn would change everything. This, Jesus said, gesturing to the void around us, is the space between what is seen and unseen. It is where truth often hides, buried beneath layers of tradition, history, and misunderstanding. I swallowed hard, the anticipation knotting in my chest. What truth are you talking about? Jesus didn't answer right away. Instead, the darkness around us began to shift, forming into an image. I saw the familiar figure of Santa Claus, jolly, round, and laughing with a sack of gifts slung over his shoulder. He waved to a crowd of children who giggled with delight as they received their presents. This is the Santa Claus, you know, Jesus said, a symbol of joy, generosity, and magic. But there is more to him than what meets the eye. The image of Santa flickered, and I saw something darker emerge beneath the surface. The cheerful laughter was replaced by a low, echoing chuckle that sent chills down my spine. His bright red suit darkened, and the twinkle in his eyes turned into something sharp and unsettling. What is this?" I stammered. Santa Claus, as he is celebrated today, is a reflection of humanity's desire to blend joy with control, Jesus said. He's not evil, but his image has been shaped by forces that seek to distract, to obscure the true meaning of what this season represents. The scene shifted again, and I saw ancient figures, bearded men in red robes, horned creatures lurking in the shadows, and festive celebrations that seemed both jubilant and ominous. The origins of Santa Claus are intertwined with traditions that predate my birth, Jesus explained. Pagan rituals celebrated the winter solstice with figures of light and shadow, symbols of life and death, joy and fear. One figure stood out, a man dressed in red sitting atop a throne. He held a staff, and at his feet were piles of offerings. People knelt before him, their faces filled with both reverence and unease. This is the prototype of Santa Claus, Jesus said, a figure who was both a giver of gifts and a demandant of tribute. Over centuries, his image softened, blending with St. Nicholas and other traditions until he became the jolly figure you know today. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. So Santa Claus is a mix of different traditions, I asked, struggling to process it all. Yes, Jesus replied. And in that mixing, the focus of Christmas began to shift. What was meant to be a celebration of love, hope, and the miracle of my birth became entwined with materialism and control. The question of who has been naughty or nice became a tool to instill fear rather than a reminder of divine grace. I thought of the countless times I had heard parents use Santa to discipline their children. Be good, or Santa won't bring you presents. It suddenly seemed so shallow, so far removed from the spirit of love and forgiveness that Jesus embodied. The scene around us began to dissolve, and I braced myself for whatever revelation was coming next. "Why didn't we see this?" I asked, my voice trembling. "Why did we let it happen?" Jesus' gaze softened, filled with both sorrow and understanding. "The world is easily distracted by what glitters," he said. Symbols like Santa Claus, though rooted in joy, became tools to pull hearts away from the deeper truths. The focus on gifts and rewards overshadowed the gift of life itself, the promise of redemption, of hope, and of eternal love. Tears filled my eyes as the weight of his words sank in. "What can we do?" I asked. "How do we bring the focus back to you, to what Christmas really means?" "The first step," Jesus said, "is to remember. Remember the light of love that Christmas represents. Share that light with others, not through things, but through your actions. Give without expecting anything in return. Love without conditions. And when you celebrate, let your heart be filled with gratitude for the miracle of life, not the fleeting joy of material things." His words resonated deeply within me. I thought of all the times I had gotten caught up in the frenzy of Christmas shopping, the pressure to find the perfect gift, the focus on impressing others rather than spreading genuine love. "I'll try," I said, my voice steady with determination. "I'll do my best to change, to remind others what Christmas is really about." Jesus smiled, and the light around us grew warmer, brighter. "That is all I ask," he said. "Be the light that the world needs. Through your love, others will remember the truth." The darkness around us began to dissolve, replaced by the golden expanse from before. I felt a tug, pulling me back toward the world I had left behind. "It's time for you to return," Jesus said. "Your journey here is not yet finished." I wanted to stay, to bask in the warmth of his presence, but I knew he was right. My time wasn't over. "Will I remember this?" I asked as the light around me began to fade. "Yes," he said, "and when you share what you've learned, you will help others remember too." With that, the light disappeared, and I found myself back in my broken car. The cold air bit at my skin, and the sound of sirens echoed in the distance. I gasped, feeling the weight of my body return, but my heart was lighter than it had ever been. From that day forward, I made it my mission to celebrate Christmas differently. I focused on love, on giving from the heart, and on sharing the story of what I had learned. And though many people were skeptical, I knew that the truth would find its way to those who needed it most. Thank you for joining us on this incredible journey. Amanda's story reminds us of the deeper meaning behind Christmas: love, hope, and divine grace beyond the gifts and glitter. If this touched your heart, please like, share, and subscribe to our channel for more thought-provoking stories. Let's keep spreading the light and remembering the true spirit of the season. What do you think about Amanda's experience? Share your thoughts in the comments below. Until next time, stay inspired and stay curious.